When I was about 6 years old, my family went on vacation to the beach in Florida. I'm a lot younger than my siblings, so while they were doing their own thing with their friends, I was stuck wherever my mom would take me. For the most part, we stayed in the extremely crowded pool area by our hotel, which had direct access to the beach. It's all a bit hazy, but at some point when I was swimming, I looked up to where my mom was supposed to be sitting, and she wasn't there. I was really attached to her, so I got out and started looking around for her. I scanned all the chairs, took a trip around the bar next to the pool, but I just couldn't find her. For some reason, 6-year-old me decided she'd gone for a walk on the beach without me, so I made my way out there looking for her. I had walked about half a mile down the beach out of the crowds to a more vacant area, and I just remember starting to cry because I thought I'd never see my mom again. Just as I had basically given up, a woman and man came up to me. They asked me who I was, and if I had had any family nearby. I had told them I was alone and looking for my mother. They said to me that they had seen her, and told me that they would hang out until she came back for me. Well, these people took me about 2 miles away from my hotel. We walked down the beach to a more residential area. They kept insisting that my mom was going to be down on the other end of the beach, and that they were going to take care of me. They tried to get me to build sandcastles with them, and even told me that we could leave to go get dinner and they'd bring me back afterwards. I kept telling them no, and that I really wanted to return to my hotel so that I could go up to my room and check for my mother there. And that's when they got really upset with me. And the woman said to me, "We're going to leave. Go get dinner at our house, and we will bring you back to your hotel afterwards. Got it?" I was starting to get really nervous at this point, so I told them I didn't want to go with them, and that I could walk back to my hotel on my own. The man then said, and I will never forget this, "You're coming home with us for dinner." He said it in one of those creepy do it or you'll die tones. I don't know, it just kind of stuck with me. Lucky for me, I heard my name in the distance. There was a group of people yelling for me. I bolted over to them, and they asked me who I was. When I told them my name, they smiled so big and said, "There are lots of people looking for you." When I turned around to tell the group that a man and woman had been hanging out with me, they were gone. The group, which actually ended up being hotel workers, took me back to my hotel where everyone was waiting. There was a fire truck, an ambulance, and news crews all there, because I had been gone for over half the day. The entire hotel pool area had been shut down in efforts to arrange search parties. My mother was sobbing, and all ended up being okay. When I told the hotel workers what had happened, they were extremely concerned. Apparently not even a week before, a child had gone missing in their beach access area. When the kid was found, he claimed a man and woman had lured him out to their car, where they tried to forcibly take him home with them, and that's when he bolted away and found another family for help. I recently discovered this subreddit, and reading all the chilling stories made me reflect on some of the creepy events that have happened in my own life. There are a few of them, but there's one that stands out more than all the others. This happened when I was about 5 years old, and therefore naturally naive and ignorant to the world and all the kinds of people in it. I never thought much of it when I was young. It was just one of those weird occurrences that you'll occasionally reflect on and never get closure. As I got older and less naive and ignorant, it really started to freak me out when I would think back on the event. My whole family went to the beach one day when we still lived in California. My dad, mom, brother, and I spent half the day at this busy beach with a lot of people. but later on we split up and did different things. I don't remember why. I just know I was with my mom at a different beach, while my brother went off with my dad somewhere. This second beach was sparsely populated, and I remember thinking how strange it was to be at a part of a beach where I had all this room to run around and play by myself. I was happy, and all I really cared about was making sandcastles and looking for those tiny sand crabs to use as my minions. We were there for less than an hour before I noticed that my mom and I had become the only ones left on the beach. It was getting kind of late in the day, so I suppose that made sense. Until this guy showed up. I don't know where he came from, or how long he'd been there, but every once in a while I would look around and see the same guy, standing the same distance away, and watching me. Sometimes he would be in a different location when I would see him, but always the same distance, and always watching me. I didn't think much of it. My mom, however, was watching him as he watched me. He was a big guy, a little overweight and probably in his 40s or 50s. I guess that doesn't matter much, but it's all I really remember of him. He didn't creep me out much at the time. I just thought he was a little strange because he was there all by himself, and it didn't look like he was having any fun. Why would a complete stranger spend his day at the beach staring at a little kid anyway? I didn't get it, but I didn't care anyway. Eventually, my mom came up to me and told me we had to go. I didn't want to go yet because I wasn't done playing, but for some reason, she didn't sound very happy. Here's where she made a mistake though. Instead of immediately taking us back to our car so we could wait for my dad and brother to show up again, she took us to the public restroom so we could wash the sand off and use the toilet before leaving. There was no one else on the beach still, except the creepy guy, and certainly no one else in the restroom. Fortunately, she moved us pretty quick, and after a couple of minutes we were out and walking back to the car. When we got back to the car and looked back, we both saw the same creepy guy walk out of the restroom, the woman specifically, and stop at the entrance to stare at us. He wasn't in there when we were inside. I can only assume he snuck around a corner and slipped inside right after we left. Not sure how he didn't see us leave first. I just know he came out after us and watched us get back in the car. At that point, I was more than a little weirded out by him, but more so because my mom seemed really upset, and I'm really not used to her being upset. She seemed a little scared and wary, but like she was trying to hide most of it and act calm in front of me. We get in the car, lock the doors, and a few minutes later my dad and brother showed up so we could leave. I could hear her telling my dad what happened, but nothing was ever done about the guy. He disappeared after we got in our car, and since cell phones weren't very common or affordable at the time, it wasn't easy for us to call the police, so we just let it go. Obviously, I have no real proof that this guy was a pedophile, so the title might be a little misleading, but I'm confident enough to guess at what his intentions were. I'm so glad my mom was watching out for me, like a good mom would, because I certainly didn't have a clue what was going on. Every time I think back on it now, it makes me realize how easily and how severely my life could have changed direction, or maybe even ended prematurely. So I had just graduated from high school in June, and about 2 weeks later, some friends and I decided to go camp out on the beach and have a bonfire and whatnot. There were a ton of other people there too, so we weren't too worried about some strange shit happening. A lot of them were still awake at their campsites well into the night, and at this age, no bonfire is complete without lots and lots of pot. So there's 4 of us, and we're hotboxing in the tent. We're really turned up, and we're just munching away on whatever we had while talking and listening to music outside by the fire. 1 a.m. rolls around, and my mom calls me because she suddenly changed her mind and wanted me home. But I was so high, I wasn't really capable of leaving just yet. So I waited an hour, and we hop into my buddy's truck and tear up the beach on the 10-minute drive back to the parking lot where I left my car. We get there, I give everyone a hug goodbye, and they tell me to drive safe or just bite the bullet and stay with them so I'm safe. I tell them I'll just nap in my car for a bit so I can come down before driving. They leave, and I'm sitting in my car for about 15 minutes, but I just start getting creeped out. There seemed to be no one out in the entire city but me, and it was just so dark and eerie. It was unsettling to say the least, so I thought, fuck this, I'm getting out of here, at least to a well-lit place. I turned on my car and backed out, then started to leave the lot, when I noticed a pair of headlights come on the other end of the lot. Shit, must be the police. Nope. I came to a stoplight and looked in my mirror. It was a black sedan. Okay, no big deal. Maybe they just happened to leave at the same time I did. Then, they started to take the same turns I was taking. I almost went through the back roads back to my town, but decided the freeway would be safer. As soon as I was on the ramp, I stomped the gas pedal and was pushing 95, and they kept up. I tried switching lanes and falling back so I was behind them, but they did the same, so I just sped up again. And they followed me for the 20-minute drive back to my town. I made a bunch of turns and was finally able to lose them by quickly turning into a narrow road, hiding my car behind some trees and shutting it off. I rolled down the window just a bit, and watched as they stopped in the street I turned from, and got out of the car and looked around cluelessly. It was two guys that had to be in their 40s. My heart was racing so badly, and I was praying that they wouldn't spot me. They just got back in and drove off. I waited 10 minutes before getting back on the road. I made it home safe, and locked every door and window when I got inside. Needless to say, I didn't sleep that night, and I stared out my window all night, just in case they found me. I'm a major fan of this subreddit, and since I've read some pretty good posts on here, I decided that I would add my own. This story isn't necessarily that scary, but the time being, I was very frightened. Just to preface, this story happened when I was about 15 years old, so going on 4 years now. I had gone on a cruise with some family and friends. My parents had decided to invite everyone on a huge vacation to the Caribbean, since we had never really been out of the country before, and everyone was completely excited. We were set to visit the island of St. Thomas, St. Martin, and Puerto Rico, not in that particular order, and each morning during the week, we would dock just outside of the island's borders. We had decided that on most of the islands we were simply going to walk around the town and maybe get something to eat. But when we heard about Magens Bay in St. Thomas, which was recently voted on Travel Channel as one of the best beaches in the entire world, we knew we had to make an exception and go there. We woke up nice and early, and the sun was just rising up over the beautiful mountains as we made our way to a minibus that was driven by a local. There was no way we could have walked there, as the bay was situated on the other side of the mountain, and the quickest route was directly over it. We needed to be back by midday approximately, so the bus driver was the best option. When we arrive at the beach, I'm particularly stunned by the sheer beauty of the locale. Everything was lush and green, and the sand was virtually pink. The water was just north of 75 degrees. Me and my friend Paul were in the water, swimming and talking and having a good time, when we heard it. From far away, we could faintly hear helicopter blades spinning. "That's odd," I said to Paul. "How would helicopter blades spinning like that make enough noise so that we could hear it from the other side of the mountain?" That's when it hit us. What we were hearing was either a helicopter with a motor the size of an Oldsmobile, or it was gunfire. Paul shifted uncomfortably in the water. "Don't think about it, dude," he told me, but I just couldn't get the thought of it out of my head. Whatever was making that noise, it had to have been a powerful assault rifle, because the noise was becoming rather sporadic as time went on. After a while, though, the noise completely stopped, and we went back to our families. After me and Paul had spent some more time swimming and scuba diving with my uncle for a while, we decided that we would amp up the fun and rent some kayaks. After we dragged the kayaks from the little hut and threw them into the water, we swam with them out to a reasonable distance and hopped in. Paul paddled up next to me and asked if I wanted to make a journey over to some mountains that were a little off in the distance, in the center of the bay. Like the adventurous young moron I was, I said yes, and we started paddling with reckless abandon towards the mountains. After paddling vigorously for about 15 minutes, however, our arms were completely numb. "Dylan," I shouted, "I can't go anymore, man. I need to rest." I turned around and saw his face was beet red. That's when I looked to the right and saw a little private beach. "Yo, I'm gonna go over there. We can pull the boats in and catch our breath on that tiny shore." We used the last of our strength to paddle over to the tiny private beach, and we dragged the kayaks onto the shore with us, when I noticed that the beaches had stairs running into the sides of the mountain. This is probably where I should explain that the entire bay was inset, so the houses are built on top of many cliffs overlooking the bay. From there, the houses had staircases that ran down to the beach, and there were 2 sets of stairs. One led to a majestic-looking house that was beautiful, yet we could not see the inside of it. However, the next house itself was clearly visible to us, because the living room wall was made entirely of glass. As we were looking up into the house admiring their beauty, someone came home. At first, we thought it was just a local. He walked briskly into the room, then oddly turned around to stare at the door. Then, just as frantically, about 9 other men entered the room with him. They quickly huddle in the center and pass something around to each of them, which could have easily been a drug deal, until we saw them stop, and Paul noticed one of the guys staring right at us down on the beach. All of them slowly turned around to face us one by one, and my heart froze in my chest. It was then that the first man went over to the door leading outside and opened it up to yell at us. I thought he was going to chastise us for being on the beach, but what he said made me start to realize this could have ended up much worse than it did. "Hey man," he yelled in a thick Caribbean accent from the backside of the porch. "Come on up. Let's talk for a little." At this point, me and Paul were frozen on the spot. "Paul," I whispered, "back away slowly, drag your kayak into the water, paddle, and don't look back." He was still yelling at us to come up until he screamed, "Fine!" It was at that point we saw him make for the staircase we were at, and 2 dudes in the living room followed suit. I had seen enough. Me and Paul raced towards our kayaks and frantically pushed them into the water, leaving enormous divots in the shoreline. I never looked back to see if they were chasing us. We paddled until we were back dead in the center of the bay, until we decided that we should head back to our parents. I don't know if it was just my young, foolish mind overreacting, but something in my gut to this day tells me that if we went up to that house, I probably would have never seen my parents again. To be honest, we might have even went up, if not for that gunfire earlier. I suppose they could have been nice. Who knows? But I wasn't willing to take that chance. We got back on the cruise ship later that night, but the memory still stays with me to this day. What's up, guys? It's Blue Spooky here. Thank you guys for watching, especially if you made it this far to the end of the video. Before I say anything else, I just want to mention that I've recently done another collab with the Unit 522. I'll leave a link in the description below if you guys want to go check that out and give that some love. And the video is pretty good. I think you guys will enjoy it. As always, links to my social media, including Facebook, Twitter, and my email, will be in the description below. If you'd like to send me a message, or if you have any stories you'd like me to read, or that you'd like to send in, go ahead and shoot me a message on one of those, and I'll try to respond as quickly as possible. If you have any constructive criticism on what I can do to improve, please feel free to leave a comment below, because I'm always looking for ways to improve the channel. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you guys have a great day.